empowering success, unraveling the crucial role of board of directors in achieving effective policy integration. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Nagesh Pinge, Independent Director, Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance, Automobile Corporation of Goa Limited, Utkarsh Small Finance Bank, followed by Captain Tapas Majumdar, Independent Director, M-Con Rasayan Private Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for the two gentlemen, please.
Thank you very much. Can everybody listen to it? Yeah. I think, let me make some disclaimers first of all. I am not the one who is delaying your lunch because we have started late. So that is one. We have been given 30 minutes. That has been pruned down from 45 minutes, so I'm okay with that also. Another declaration that I want to make, like that movie where somebody said, I'm Khan, but I'm not a terrorist. Let me announce it. I am an independent director, and I'm not an ESG expert. So I think with that, let me start. We have with us, of course, Tapash. Tapash is the best of both because he's not only independent director, but also a consultant and advisory on ESG related parts. So what we will do is, I will speak more on my own experience. I have about 10 companies on which I'm an independent director. Very wide industries. They are stretching from regulated entity to the manufacturing kind of companies on that account. And I think my experience I will talk about. I will tell you what are the things that are happening in our things. And it will give you a right kind of perspective. I just want to know from my own sake, how many of you are ESG practitioners in this group? Okay, the rest of the people are actually working on ESG related work. So it's a good thing. So I will tell you about my own experience in that typical thing. First is, I think we should know that ESG as an initiative or sustainability as an initiative has not really started from within. I think we are all forced to get into it. Is that right? Or you feel that we want to do it on our own? And that's where I want to understand. Everybody agrees that we are thrust upon this particular thing, or we feel that we want to do it? Thrust upon it. That's the thing. And I think because it is thrust upon us, we are now working towards that particular part. But this is where, I'm an ex-cricketer. So in that context, I will tell you, there are three kinds of cricket which is going on today. T20, then the 50-over matches, the international, typical one, and there is also a test match. I want to know, and this is where I want to put our own self to the test. Are we playing the T20 game, or we are playing the test match? Test match is a long haul kind of things on that account. ESG, according to me, is almost 3 to 5 years of journey. And I think in that context, we seem to be hurrying it up in a real big way. Of course, there are people like, SGS here, the rest of the people are there. They will all say, you use our this rating, you use this kind of framework, and they will thrust upon us on that account. Do you think we are really picking up the right kind of methodology? Are we really looking at our BSRS reporting seriously? I have been, in fact, a lot of people are coming out with their annual reports now. This is the first time I'm talking about the top companies which are forced to get into BSRS. How many of you have really studied it? You will realize their language is also the same. Most of the service providers are giving 19 to 20, 19-20 as we call it, kind of, run-of-the-mill kind of reports to all of them. Have you seen that kind of things on that account? You must see the top 50 companies or 100 companies. You will see their language remains more or less the same. It indirectly gives me an indication that we are all doing more of, nice kind of writing rather than working on it. I would like to, have some disagreement in that regard, but I am of the opinion, you look at all of them, everybody seems to be complying with BSRS. Nobody is saying, I'm struggling with it. Have a look at this particular thing. Do you think that's a reality of that? Is it something what I call, I call it as a green washing. Is it something like that is happening? Just a question, I'm just throwing it on that account, and I'm referring to my own companies also. I think one thing that I must say, and this is where I'm coming back, and I'm going to give you time after that particular thing. I think most of us are compelled to do this BSRS reporting, number one. Number two, we know we have to work on ESG related work because we have committed under COP26. We are talked about, I say, this zero emissions by 2070. We are talking about this fossil fuels also. We will not be doing it beyond the stage. We are talking about renewable energy of 50% on, by 2030. A lot of commitments have gone our way. And we know eventually government will compel us to do that kind of thing. So we are working on that particular part. But I think one thing is there, having done that, have you looked at how are really we as an organization working towards that particular cause? I saw a lot of debate here. People are talking about should CSR do it, should the ERM, the risk management committee should take on, who kind of thing should own up on that account. I feel it's the entire board of directors who has to take on the responsibility. And I think this ESG piece is such a big piece that it is not just, G is something which is the governance, more or less, as somebody said rightly, we are all structured because the government laws, regulations are very clear. We are more or less there on that account. S also, when it comes to employee-related part, a lot of those things are covered in that typical way. But E is a word which probably we are saying we will leave it to somebody else to help us out on that account. But I think all of us individually as a company and also as an individual, we must do something in order to implement that particular part. So before I will talk about my own experience, I will request Tapash to talk about something on, I think we were discussing it. He's talking about some typical, a globally good company which has really implemented a right kind of framework. You can talk about it and also your own experience. And then I will talk about some of the other matters, that's something which are very critical from my perspective, which probably all of you should take it back, because I'm not a ESG practitioner, but sitting in the board, I've seen some companies are very seriously taking it. They are taking it not because it's because of the compulsion, but because they know that it is required on that account. And some of them are pharma companies. They are really, really doing it well because they are used to that kind of things on that account. But some of the companies which are not in that kind of thing, chalta hai attitude is coming in. They are doing more like, I would say, not improving in the real sense, but at the same time, they are trying to see how I can make my BSRS reporting more polished. I would like to hear from you, Tapash, on that account.
Sure. Firstly, Nagesh, I do agree to what you're saying in terms of companies are being forced to adopt. If you really look at it, well, that is the first thing that governments across the world do when they are trying to induce change. So India, through the BRSR reports, which is initiated by SEBI, and they are further improving on that, so that's a good thing. And that's currently to a limited, about 1,000 companies. It is going to expand to everybody. But it is still restricted only to listed companies. So we are still talking a large number of companies which have great environment and social impact, which is not covered in it. And it's the same approach that all other countries have taken. You look at China, you look at Indonesia, you look at Malaysia, you look at Singapore. Europe, of course, is leading this entire initiative. And the laws are pretty well set. They're more on the compliance mode. So in that sense, it is natural that you start with legislation and you look for compliance. Now, because it is forced down your throat, nobody likes it. And the other thing is when we talk about sustainability report, it sounds very clerical. So it is like yet another report that needs to be submitted as part of, one more tick mark is what you need to do. So in many ways, it is a start. But if you look at organizations who have really benefited from sustainability, who have really applied sustainability and been able to have tangible impacts on the top line, the bottom line, or even both. Because the way I look at it, sustainability is a business function. Okay. Now, in our firm, the sustainability practitioners, we are quite biased towards companies. And the main reason why we do that is because all the governments put together can probably incentivize or penalize or try and push in some funds, but they can't fund the kind of money that is required to stem climate change, let alone changing it. Industry has to be involved. Why would a company willingly do it? Because currently, when you talk about ESG and sustainability, it's looked at cost. It's not looked at revenue. And the onus is on us, practitioners, because I think we have put it up brought out only one side of it. If industry can see an ROI, they will invest. And this is one of the core philosophies. See, I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, but I write balance scorecards very well. And that's how the whole thing started after I finished my certification from IUD. And that's how the whole thing started. So not a scientist, not an engineer, but since I write balance scorecards, I said, okay, if I can get the companies to see an ROI on their investment, they will invest. If there is investment, there will be practice. If there is practice, there will be impact. Till date, that is the value proposition that we bring in. And till the time we don't link these activities to ESG, I'm talking about sustainability, to the top line or the bottom line, because business understands only one language, and that is the language of numbers. If we cannot talk that language, business is not going to understand it. All the great plans are going to fall flat if we don't do this. As simple as that. With respect to companies, now there are many companies who have really benefited from this. People who have really taken it up very seriously. One organization that comes to my mind is a company called Allbirds. Now, this is a company that manufactures shoes. Now, I'm not sure how many of us would have heard about Allbirds because they're not present in India. They're present in the US and now in Europe. This is a company that started off in the year 2015. The business opportunity that they saw was to create comfortable shoes, simple shoes without branding and logos. That's the opportunity that they saw. And they started manufacturing. During the process of manufacturing, the two co-founders, when they visited their plant, they realized they're using too much of leather, too much of resin, and other products. They thought, why not? Can we look at a sustainable option? That's how merino wool came into being. The same thing that makes our blazers. They make shoes out of these. And cost of production was obviously down. They patented one of the products. And till date, they manufacture on merino wool itself. It comes from sheep, it comes from wood. So they're not exactly cutting down forests, but even decaying wood is adequate enough for the manufacturing. Now, by moving to sustainable manufacturing, just this one initiative, the commitment from the top management, this company was formed in 2015. Till the last quarter, 2023, it's only in the last quarter that they made the first rupee, the first dollar, at operating level. They've never made profits. Revenues have been high. Their market share during COVID dropped 75%. They were listed in the year 2019, in November, 3rd of November, if I'm not wrong. They were listed at $15 a share. That very first day went up to $26, and today it is at $4. Anybody in the right mind will not invest in this company. But 220 million investment by 10 investors, major investors, I'm not even talking to minor investors. Overall, they've gone through 7 rounds of funding. And all the big investors are there. And now the turning around is starting. So ESG is a long game. But these investors wouldn't have stayed invested in the company. They, in fact, increased their investments when things were going down. That is the kind of value that sustainability as a function can add to your top line and your bottom line. Look at Lego Toys, another company that comes to my mind. Okay. When they started manufacturing the famous Lego bricks, they were using wood. because there was a lot of fire incidences, they changed that to various plastic-related materials. That little technical terms, I'm not too familiar with those. Now they know plastic is not going to be the future. Lego toys, the entire business is on plastic. It is an existential issue for them. Much before 2015, the board put this in motion. Much before 2015. They had their R&D, they invested heavily. Today, 10% of the Lego bricks that you see is made out of recycled PET bottles. 10% of the famous Lego bricks. And even till date, any Lego pack which was bought by the previous generations and you buy one today, you can still mix them both and play. There's no change in standards. Heineken, for example. By the time it was 2015, they were already on sustainability. Big weights, part of strategy. 10% was any of their power consumption was already coming from renewable sources. In 2015, we were not talking reporting at all. But these were companies where the boards took it up very seriously and got down into detailing. And if you really get into the micro of it, implementing sustainability is really not a very big challenge. It's really not a very big challenge. It appears very expensive. In certain cases, yes, it is. But the smaller things are really not that expensive either. I'll give an example here. For one of the companies that we were writing the sustainability report, they wanted to be known as an equal opportunity employer. Now, when we think about this, we normally think men and women. But there is a third gender, and they are legal. They can represent us in the parliament as well. So when we say equal opportunity, it involves everybody. Now, when we had to bring this change, I'm talking about the S part of it, although we may say in conferences like this that we are quite open to it, but not everybody is. When it comes to your workplace and somebody who's a transgender who's actually sitting beside you and working and probably drawing equal pay. Now, this company was very serious about it. Now, I'm a fan of small changes, not big bang changes. Six Sigma green belts, I think in terms of processes. What we did was very simple. Manpower acquisition form, interview assessment form, travel reimbursement form, all the forms that we use very often. The forms have a power. Even if you have filled it 1,000 times, the very next one you're still going to read all the points. And when you read it, I was hitting them at a cognitive level. So it registers with you every time. All that we did was male, female, transgender. That's it. The first 1 month, there was a lot of noise. After that, the noise subsided because he has a choice not to tick mark. But over a period of time, it is now normal to see transgender in your list. And God willing, if they manage to recruit, the resistance will be slightly lesser than what it otherwise would have. So it's not very expensive. It is not very big. It is, the God is in the detail. The devil is also in the detail. So the bigger things handle itself. So was that okay?
Good. Thank you. I think another thing, looking at my companies and also some of the companies which are our competitors on that account, some of the typical challenges that we look at it as a director from the other side, as a non-ESG person from that thing. One of them is, I think it is necessary for you to see to it that board of directors as well as executive management is aligned to your ESG initiatives. I think, so no doubt it comes from there, but it should not land up in saying that tick mark karo. Based on that, look at it. And I think in that, the typical thing that comes in is when you do the benchmarking, when you are comparing your things on that account, you tend to look at inferior companies than what you are. And I think in that context, you have to see to it that you compare yourself only with the top companies, because that is where you have to eventually land. And I think a lot of advisors do that to you, saying that you look out for your companies of your size, but that's not the correct way of looking at it. So this is one initiative which I will tell you people very clearly. Second one is, I think budgets, when they go, when you are looking at annual plan, I've seen so many people look at only quarter to quarter kind of results, and they are more concerned about that particular part. They don't look at it. Good companies will give you both what we would have done if we had not done ESG and what we are doing it because of ESG. And I think this is something you must ask for, because that is the way you look at it. Are you genuinely doing ESG work, or you are just doing the lip service, as I would like to call it? And I think these are the two things that I will put it across to you on that account. Another one is, there are some typical strict no-nos that I believe in. I have seen so many management asking, and that happens in board also, which rating agency you are going to, which framework you are going to use, and then they will say, yahan pe acha milega rating, then you go with that kind of things on that account. And I think don't go and keep on changing your rating agencies, don't go and change your frameworks. Otherwise, you will know that you are doing more like a lip service than really doing a great job. Because I think you must know how much you are really working on that kind of things on that account. And I have seen that typical trend in some companies. Fortunately, my companies are not in that thing. They are very comfortable to say, we are not ready. We will get ready on that particular part on that account. And I think another one which I talk about it is, ESG should not be done more like a communication exercise. I think unless and until you are totally convinced on that particular part, don't do that kind of thing. Because there is something called green washing, and there is something called green blushing also. Don't do the green blushing, at the same time don't do green washing also. I think you need to be balanced on that account. And I think we have to say, it takes at least 3 to 5 years by the time we reach a level on that account. I've seen so many companies very proudly talking about their ratings and all, especially IT related thing. I don't want to talk too much. But if you ask them, are you covering the entire value chain? They will say, yeah, we look at our vendors. The point is, if you are giving service to somebody in IT-enabled services, and they are the ones who are going to create a lot of things which are not part of ESG, do you think you can say they are our customers, I'm not worried about it? So I think you have to look at entire value chain in whichever industry you are, and that's the way you should look at it on that account. And then another one is typical thing which are, I would say, the involvement of the board. And I think in that context, I've seen a number of times it happens that one of the committees is given that assignment of ESG. And this is where I have a different view. And 3 companies where we are really progressively working on that. What we have done is, we have ensured that this is an organization-wide drive. Certainly, the typical KPIs of ESG are retained at the board level. And then a lot of committees are given individual responsibilities of that particular part. And I think a good organization should do that terms of reference very clearly. Of course, the G part, the governance part, you have risk management committee, you have audit committee, then you have some typical kind of things on that account. When it comes to the social related part, you have NRC, then stakeholders relationship committee. We all look at that kind of things on that account. But I think you need to give specific kind of terms of reference to these committees on that account. And when it comes to the E part, according to me, we don't have a choice, but the board should own it in that responsibility. Because I think it requires lot on waste, lot on energy efficiency, where you require humongous amount of capital investment number of times ahead of time. Another benchmarking, and which I always believe a good organization will always do, and this is very critical on that account. We tend to feel, what are our rules of the law of the land we will comply with. We never go 1 step or 2 steps above that particular thing on that account. And this is where I think we need to change our way of looking at it, to say, we are not just doing it for ourselves, but we are doing it for our community, we are doing it for our country, and that's the way we should try to work on that particular part. And in that, I must say, ESG culture is something which need to build up across the organization. I think there is something called, what are we really working on? We want pure, we want to be net zero in pollution, we want to be net zero in water. What kind of things are doing? I would like each and every organizational employee who's working there should talk about it on that account. And if he knows, he will start doing it. For instance, some of the companies in Singapore and in US and all, they switch off air conditioners after some typical period of time. No AC is available. People are supposed to leave in next 1.5 hours time, they do that. That's how they save their energy related part. I think that culture has to go across the organization, otherwise it will just become a lip service. I've seen so many people doing it, that temperature, what kind of temperature you will not allow beyond this, what kind of water you will do it. Like for instance, I'm glad that we are keeping these paper boxes, otherwise you will see glasses, full of, water boxes, plastic bottles on that particular thing. And then we talk about ESG, it really doesn't serve the purpose. For instance, I felt so bad about it. Here I see my name being put in that plastic folder on that account. I would allowed to be without it. So I think these are some of the things that culture has to come into the things. And I think this is where, as a board member, I tend to tell people, don't do it just for rating, just don't do it for just show purposes. I think we genuinely feel it is necessary to look at it. And in that, this BSRS core principles, I don't know how many of you really looked at it. Water footprint, embracing circularity, this is the waste management, then all those kinds of things, gender diversity. I've seen so many people, even in the board, asking, अरे वो एक lady member को director लेने का है ना? Why don't we do that? I think we are looking at lady just to fill up that typical spot is a wrong way to look at it. I would like that person to say, will she do value addition or not? And I think this is a very critical part NRC looks at it. And I think today we have enough supply of people if we want to do that kind of things. But I've seen that typical trend comes in to say, lady leni hai, chalo lady. I think I feel very bad about it. According to me, we should see to it that diversity should be taken in right sense, in real way on that account. I think these are some of the things which I will talk about. And I think I will request you, we are now left with some 3 or 2 minutes. You want to talk something which you probably want to communicate, we'll do it. And after that, I want to spend a typical 2 minutes thing. I got a great story. I'm a very fond reader. I come from Karnataka. So we have something called Jataka stories, this Buddha related part. One typical thing I want to talk, it will take not more than 2 minutes, and that's how we will conclude. But I think you want to say something, then we will do that kind of things. Because I think we are left with your own experience, what exactly you've done.
Okay. Taking the clue from what you were talking about for the board of directors, I think the way we look at sustainability is more outward in terms of we need to meet compliance requirements. We need to meet, there are companies which report on more than one framework. All right. I think that's an overkill. You need to start with looking inside your organization. The questions that you need to ask is very, very important here. Like we take the balanced scorecard approach to write the sustainability report, especially the KPIs. Now, that means you're writing the strategy map, and then you're getting onto the KPI. So when you're doing the strategy map, we are essentially talking, how is sustainability as a function contributing to the financial objective of the company? That's the first question that we ask. Then we say, okay, this is the way it is going, and that's how we are integrating sustainability into the business objective. That's why I said it's a business function. It's not a support function. And that's the way it starts. And from there, then you take it on. So you need to first look internal, prepare it, because the tangible benefit, like for example, you're going to reduce carbon, right? Everybody wants to do that. When you're going to reduce carbon emissions from operations, let's say, what are you actually doing? You're revisiting all your processes, all your procurements, all internal plan. And what it gives you the efficiency, it gives you that benefit in terms of cost, in terms of probably revenue opportunities, so on and so forth. And the objective is to reduce carbon. So there is a top line, bottom line impact. Start with that, and the board needs to drive this. Because down the line, you may not have that kind of maturity. It is the board which needs to drive it and take it up. So look at it from that point. Once you have done that, then, like, we are framework agnostic. We don't report on any particular framework. We are open to all. Once you have done your material map, your stakeholder map, your KPIs, what we call as a practitioner scorecard, and the stakeholder communication framework, these are the 4 things that we first write, and then whichever framework, because frameworks are merely a tool. And over a period of time, they've perfected so much that it is near clerical activity, where the application of mind is really not that significant. But what comes as application of mind is in the material map discussion, where you're mapping your risks and opportunities and then linking it up to sustainability. Where your stakeholder mapping you're doing, where you are not looking where the stakeholder fits into your organization. That way everybody does. But if that stakeholder fails, it is your business that gets impacted. So I need to know his business. That's what is the difference when we do stakeholder mapping for sustainability. KPIs, whether you're using a balanced scorecard or writing a good KPI, it applies. And even more important, stakeholder communication framework. How are we getting back to our stakeholders? When Nestle or Cadbury had that worm in the chocolate, it did not become a very big issue. We ourselves said, you know what, it's one in an exception. One of the reasons why is because of the communication, the brand they've been able to build. If it was any other organization, it would have shut. Look at Maggie. They literally poisoned us. But isn't Maggie back on our shelves? Aren't we giving it to our kids? Stakeholder communication is very, very equally important. And when you start communicating when the disaster strikes, and maybe I can close it with this particular example. It's a company that is in the business of transporting petroleum products offshore to onshore. That's all that they do. So they have ships, they have pipes. So last year, anchor of a ship hit a pipe and they did everything right. Now this company has a very high ESG rating. But the sustainability report is nowhere to be seen. Now 1 year after that incident, a 15 centimeter crack opened up in that pipe, same spot. And as we expect, this is off the coast of Florida, as we expect, there was contamination of the water. So they did everything right to contain it. And they approached the local community, all of that. But nobody believed them because they never communicated. So now that the incident has happened, now they are talking is the view that everybody had. But when you look at the sustainability report, they actually had a plan to communicate, which we never did. As a result, they're saddled with lawsuits, even after doing everything right. Even stakeholder communication is very, very important, which we generally don't. All of this has impact on top line, bottom line, gentlemen, ladies. All of this. And trust me, it is not very complicated. At the end of the day, business is a value generating activity, and business is supposed to be common sense. So really, it works that way.
Thank you. I think we are already overshot on timing. So I think rather than talking about Jataka's story, I just want to say something. We always believe, and all of us have that typical feeling, and I also started feeling earlier, about few years back. Why me? That was the question we were asking. And number of times we find, why should I do it? Others are not doing it. And this is a typical thing. If we decide to do it, it will really create problems for us because others will say, let others do it, then I will only do it. I think in ESG, there is nothing like that. We should contribute to the extent whatever we can do, irrespective of others are doing it or not. And I think in that context, I always tell all the companies which I am involved, fortunately I'm involved with good groups on that account, do your best. Don't worry about what your competitor does. He's doing a bad practices, let him be. But I think we should continue with our good standards. And this is a very critical part. And this is where that Jatak story is, in fact, is about the bird. This bird when that bird sees that there is a fire in that particular thing, with her little wings, she comes and puts water on that to try to see how she can, dose this fire in that typical way. Everybody, all other birds tell them, this is not the time to do, you save your own life. She says, no, I will do it for me on that particular part. And I will keep on doing it till the time I can do it on that account. Then God also helps us and they try to extinguish that particular thing on that account. So I think we are like that bird. We should try to do whatever we can do from our perspective. Probably you will cover the half of that particular thing, but there will be enough birds like you who will be there in the globe, who will take best part of it. I think ESG is overall Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, as I call it. So I think all of us need to do that in right earnest. And this is where even if, let's say, sometimes your quarterly performance doesn't happen because of the expenses that you have taken out, which is on a long-term basis, I think you have to look at it at long-term kind of perspective, and good companies will do that. With that, I think we would like to conclude the thing, unless somebody wants to ask a question, but we are already overshot on time. Otherwise, this lady will again start yelling at me. I think, can we conclude then? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.